Before we get into anything today, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you actually stopped and wondered why you were here? Not as a passing thought, not for a second while you were waiting for something else. I mean really stopped, sat down with the question, gave it the space it deserves. Most of us never do. Life has a way of filling every quiet moment before we can use it. There is always something next, something waiting, something demanding attention. And the question just stays there underneath everything, patient and unresolved, surfacing sometimes at night when the noise finally stops and we are left alone with ourselves. Why am I here? Does any of this mean something? Or is it all just chance? I think how a person answers that question, even silently, even without ever putting it into words, shapes almost everything about the way they live, how much they believe they matter, how much they think they are worth fighting for, whether they believe that the direction of their life can actually change, or whether they have quietly accepted that this is simply how things are. So I want to start there today. Not with arguments, not with theology, just with one image. One detail buried in an ancient text that I have come back to more times than I can count. Because every time I sit with it, I find something I had not seen before. In the very beginning of the Bible, there is an account of creation. Whether you have read it, whether you believe it, whether you are still somewhere in the middle trying to figure out what you think about all of this, it does not matter right now. Just stay with the story for a moment. Because there is something in it that speaks to something very human. Something we all carry, whether we have words for it or not. The account describes God creating the world. Light, sky, land, ocean. Every living creature, each one brought into existence by a word. He speaks, and it is there. There is an effortlessness to it, a kind of calm authority that does not need to strain or reach, just speaks, and the universe responds. But then the story changes its pace. When it comes to human beings, something is different. It does not say he spoke from a distance. It says he formed, he shaped. He worked with his hands, taking dust from the ground, pressing it into something. And then he leaned in close and breathed. Genesis says it this way: "The Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." I want you to stay with that image for a moment. Everything else was made from a distance, but the human being was made up close, with hands, with breath, close enough that the warmth of it was felt. That is not the language of someone completing a task. That is the language of someone who cares about what they are making. There is a difference between building something and creating something. Building is about function. You need an outcome, you produce it, you move on. But creating, real creating, carries something of the person doing it. The closeness is intentional. Every detail is a decision. The time spent is not wasted, it is the point. What the creation account describes when it comes to human beings looks like the second one. Not construction, creation. Not output, care. And then there is this. Of everything made in that account, only one creature is described as carrying the image of God. Not the mountains, not the oceans, not any animal, however complex or beautiful. Only human beings. Only you. Now I know that is easy to read and hard to feel. Because most of us do not move through the world feeling like we carry something sacred. Most of us move through it feeling pretty ordinary, sometimes far less than ordinary. We feel like we are behind somehow, like everyone else figured something out that we missed, like the life we have does not quite match the one we were supposed to have, and at some point the gap became too wide to close. And when things break, when relationships fall apart, when the plans we held on to quietly collapse, when the person we trusted most turns out to be someone we did not fully know, it becomes very easy to conclude that maybe we were never that significant to begin with. Maybe significance is for other people. Maybe that is just not the kind of life I have. I want to speak to that directly. The breath in your lungs right now was not random. It was not the result of forces that have no awareness of you. It was not accidental. It was given, deliberately, by someone who leaned close enough to give it personally. And if that is true, if you were made with the same deliberate closeness that the very first human being was made with, then the smallness you feel is not the final word on who you are. It is just the distance between what you know about yourself and what is actually true. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove that we matter, to people around us, to ourselves if we are honest. We achieve things hoping the feeling will come. We build things hoping to leave something behind. We stay busy because stopping means facing the question we have been avoiding. And yet the longing never quite goes away. The desire to mean something, to be known, to be significant not because of what we produced, but because of who we are. I think we carry that longing because we were made for it. Not the version of it that comes from applause or achievement. The version that was placed in us before we ever did anything. The kind that was breathed in. There is a line in Psalm 139 that I find almost impossible to read quickly. It says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Fearfully and wonderfully. Not adequately. Not sufficiently. Wonderfully. That word was chosen deliberately, by someone writing thousands of years ago who understood something about the weight of being human that we keep forgetting and keep needing to remember. You are not here by accident. You were not made carelessly, and whatever you are carrying right now, whatever has made you feel small or forgotten or beyond the reach of anything good, you are not invisible to the one who breathed life into you. In the next part, we are going to face the question that this raises, because if all of this is true, if we were made with this kind of care and intention, then something does not add up. Because the world we live in does not always feel like the work of someone who cares. It feels like the opposite sometimes. And that question deserves a real answer. Stay with me for that one. There is a question that religious people and non-religious people alike have asked for as long as human beings have been capable of asking questions. And it is not a comfortable one. If there is a God who is good, who is powerful, who made us with intention and care the way we talked about in the last part, then why does life hurt the way it does? Why do children get sick? Why do people who have given everything to build something good watch it fall apart anyway? Why does loss feel so permanent, so final, so completely indifferent to how much we needed the thing we lost? I have heard a lot of answers to that question over the years. Some of them are true but incomplete. Some of them are well-meaning but thin. Some of them are the kind of answer that sounds right until you are actually inside the pain, and then it dissolves the moment you need it most. I do not want to give you that kind of answer today. I want to take this seriously, because the question deserves it, because you deserve it, because there is a difference between an explanation that satisfies the mind in a quiet moment and a truth that actually holds when everything around you is falling. So let us go slowly. The first thing I want to say is something that I think gets skipped over too quickly, and it is this: God never pretended the pain was not real. There is a moment in the Gospels that I find remarkable every time I come back to it. A man named Lazarus had died. He was a friend of Jesus, someone Jesus knew well, someone Jesus loved. And by the time Jesus arrived, Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. The sisters of Lazarus came to him. Mary fell at his feet, weeping. The people around her were weeping. And the text says something that is very short, but very significant. It says Jesus wept. He wept. Not because he did not know what was about to happen. He was about to raise Lazarus from the dead. He knew what he was going to do before he arrived, and he still wept. I have thought about that for a long time. Why weep if you already know the ending? And I think the answer is this: because the grief in that moment was real. Because the pain of the people around him was real. Because he did not stand outside of human suffering and observe it from a careful distance. He stepped into it. He let it land on him. He allowed himself to be moved by it. The God of the Bible is not distant from your pain. He is not looking at it from far away and waiting for you to resolve it before he steps in. He has already wept over it. But that still does not answer the question: why is the pain there in the first place? Let me try to take you back to something. Before any of the suffering, before any of the breaking, before the world became what it is now, there is a picture in Genesis of what it was supposed to be. A garden. Everything provided. Everything in its right place. Human beings in an open, unbroken relationship with God. Not straining toward Him, not performing for Him, just present with Him, the way you are present with someone you love and do not need to explain yourself to. And in that garden, God gave human beings something extraordinary. He gave them freedom. Real freedom. Not the appearance of it. Not a controlled environment where every option leads to the same outcome. Actual freedom. The kind that means something because it costs something. There was one tree they were told not to eat from. One boundary in an entire garden of abundance. And the reason that boundary existed was not arbitrary. It was not a test for the sake of testing. It was the space in which their freedom could actually be expressed. Because here is the thing about freedom that we often do not think through all the way. You cannot have love without freedom. You simply cannot. Think about what it would mean if it were otherwise. Imagine someone who tells you they love you. Every day they say it. Every day they show up. But you find out one day that they had no choice. That something inside them, something they were born with or conditioned into, made it impossible for them to do anything else. They could not leave if they wanted to. They could not pull away. They could not withhold. Does that change how it feels? It does. Of course it does. Because love that cannot choose otherwise is not love. It is mechanism. It is programming. It may produce warmth. It may even produce comfort. But at the center of it, there is nothing freely given. And we know the difference. We feel it. God wanted something that could not be manufactured. He wanted the kind of love that chooses, that turns toward Him not because it was built to, but because it wants to. That stays not because it cannot leave, but because it would rather be here. And that means the freedom had to be real. But real freedom is a serious thing. When you give a person the genuine ability to choose, You give them the genuine ability to choose wrongly. You give them the capacity to turn towards something that will hurt them, to reach for something that looks like it will satisfy and does not, to walk away from the very thing that was holding them together. And that is what happened. The moment recorded in Genesis when the first human beings turned away from God is described simply, quietly almost, as if the text knows that the weight of it does not need to be dramatized. They chose the one thing they had been told would break them. And it did. Not just them, everything connected to them. Paul writes in his letter to the Romans that creation itself was subjected to frustration, that the whole world, not just human beings, but the ground beneath our feet, the systems that hold life together, the natural order itself, was pulled into the fracture. We are living inside the consequences of that moment. Every disease, every war, every relationship that corrodes from the inside until there is nothing left. Every quiet devastation that happens to people who did nothing to deserve it. These are not things God designed. They are the wreckage of a freedom that was used in the wrong direction. And I want to be careful here, because I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, that still does not explain my specific pain. That still does not explain why it happened to me, why my child, why my marriage, why that diagnosis, that loss, that particular thing that I would have given anything to avoid. And you are right. A general explanation does not dissolve a specific wound. So let me say something more personal. There is a kind of suffering that comes from choices, from the accumulated weight of human freedom used badly across generations and individuals. And there is a kind of suffering that feels completely random, that lands on you without warning and without reason, and sits there demanding an explanation that never comes. I do not think the honest answer in those moments is to explain it away. I think the honest answer is to say, I do not fully know why this specific thing happened to you. And anyone who tells you they do is probably giving you a smaller answer than the question deserves. But what I do know is this. There is a verse in Romans that Paul wrote in the middle of his own suffering, in the middle of imprisonment and persecution, and a life that was anything but comfortable. And he wrote these words, "We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him." Not that all things are good, not that the pain was sent to teach you a lesson, not that you should feel grateful for the hardest moments of your life as though they were gifts you just do not understand yet. In all things, God works. There is a difference between saying everything happens for a reason and saying nothing is beyond redemption. The first one can feel cold and small, and like someone handing you a formula instead of sitting with you. The second one is something else. It is the claim that even inside the worst thing, there is a God who has not left, who has not looked away, who is present, active, still working, even when you cannot see it and cannot feel it and have stopped expecting it. And that claim does not rest on a philosophy. It rests on what happened at the cross. But we will get to that in the next part. For now, I want to leave you with this. The pain you carry is not evidence that God has forgotten you. The silence you have felt in your hardest moments is not proof that no one is there. There is a line in Psalm 34 that I think was written for exactly this. It says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Not the ones who have it together, not the ones who have found the right answers. The brokenhearted, the crushed. Those are the ones he is described as being close to. I think that is deeply intentional, because the broken-hearted are the ones who have stopped pretending, who have let go of the version of life they thought they were going to have, who are no longer performing and are just, honestly, quietly, sometimes desperately, present with what is real. And that kind of honesty, as painful as it is, creates an opening. Not to answers necessarily, not right away, but to something, to someone who has been there the whole time, closer than you realized. Stay with me for the next part, because what happens next in this story is the part that changes everything. I want to tell you about a moment in history that I think is the most surprising thing that has ever happened. Not surprising in the way that unexpected news is surprising, not surprising in the way that a twist in a story catches you off guard. Surprising in a way that, if you actually let yourself sit with it, changes the way you understand almost everything else. We ended the last part with a question still open. If the pain is real, if the fracture in this world runs as deep as it does, if human freedom has produced the kind of damage that we all know it has, then where does that leave us? Is the story just one of loss? Of something beautiful that broke and stays broken? Or is there something else? Let me start by saying something that I think is worth sitting with for a moment before we go any further. Most of the ways human beings have thought about God, across cultures and across centuries, follow a similar direction. God is up there. We are down here. The distance between us is the result of our failure, our impurity, our inadequacy. And the path forward is the path upward. Do more. Be better. Accumulate enough goodness, enough devotion, enough sacrifice, until the gap closes and you have earned your way to something higher. It is a logic that makes a certain kind of sense. You broke something. You fix it. You earn back what you lost. But the story at the center of Christianity moves in the opposite direction entirely. It does not say we climbed up. It says he came down. And I want you to understand how strange that is. Not strange in a negative way. Strange in the way that something completely unexpected and completely undeserved is strange. The kind of strange that takes your breath away if you let it. Think about what it would mean for the most powerful person you can imagine to choose to become the most vulnerable thing imaginable. Think about a king who steps down from everything that defines his kingship, who sets aside every privilege and every protection, and walks out into the street as an ordinary person. No title, no guard, no safety net. Just present in the middle of everything, exposed to everything, subject to everything that ordinary people are subject to. That picture, as limited as it is, begins to point at what the incarnation means. John begins his gospel with words that I think deserve more attention than they usually get. He writes, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And then, a few lines later, the sentence that I think is one of the most staggering in all of human literature. "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." The one who was in the beginning, the one through whom everything was made, the one who exists outside of time and space and every limitation that defines our experience of being alive. That one became flesh, became human, became subject to hunger and exhaustion and grief and the particular loneliness of being deeply misunderstood by people you love. Not from a distance, from the inside. And I think the reason this matters so much, The reason it is not just a theological detail, but something that reaches into the very personal question of whether God understands your life, is this. He did not enter a comfortable version of human existence. He was not born into wealth or power or the kind of circumstances that insulate a person from the harder realities of being alive. He was born in a borrowed space, in a town that was not his family's home, to parents who had very little, in a country that was occupied by a foreign empire that had no interest in the dignity of the people it controlled. He grew up in an ordinary place among ordinary people. He worked with his hands for years before anyone outside of his small circle had any idea who he was. He knew what it felt like to be tired at the end of a long day. He knew what it felt like to be hungry. He knew what it felt like to sit with someone who was in pain and not be able to explain it away. Just be present with it. The book of Hebrews says something about this that I think is one of the most tender things in the entire Bible. It says we do not have a high priest who is unable to feel sympathy for our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are. Every way. That means whatever you are facing right now, whatever the specific texture of your struggle is, the loneliness or the fear or the exhaustion or the sense that you are carrying something too heavy for one person to carry alone. He has not observed that from a safe distance. He has been inside it. And then there is the cross. I want to talk about the cross carefully, because I think it is one of those things that has been described so many times in so many ways that it is easy to hear about it and not actually feel the weight of what it means. Let me try to come at it from a different angle. There is something in all of us, something deep and persistent, that knows we are not entirely what we were meant to be. We do not always name it that way. We might call it guilt or regret, or the low-grade sense of not measuring up to something we cannot quite define. But it is there. Most people feel it at some level, even if they have stopped listening to it. And one of the most universal human instincts is the instinct to deal with that somehow, to balance the scale, to make up for what we have done or what we have been by doing or being something better, to earn our way back to a version of ourselves we are not ashamed of. We do it in relationships. We do it in the quiet ways we try to justify ourselves to ourselves. We spend enormous amounts of energy managing the gap between who we are and who we think we should be. And the message of the cross says something that cuts directly through all of that. It says the gap has already been addressed, not by you. Here is an image that I have sat with for a long time. Imagine you have been carrying a debt for years. Not a financial debt, though it feels like one. A debt of a different kind. Something owed that you have never been able to fully pay, no matter how long you have been trying, no matter how many times you have resolved to do better. And one day someone comes and says, "I have settled it." Not because you earned that, not because you finally got yourself together enough to deserve it, but because they chose to. Because something in them looked at your situation and decided that the weight you were carrying was not something they were willing to watch you carry alone anymore. That is the direction the cross moves in. Paul writes in his second letter to the Corinthians, "God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." He took what was ours, so that we could receive what was his. I want to stay with that exchange for a moment, because I think it is easy to move past it too quickly. What was ours was the accumulated weight of everything we have done and everything we have been that has contributed to the fracture. Every choice made in fear instead of love. Every moment of cruelty, small or large. Every time we turned away from someone who needed us. Every way we have used our freedom to diminish rather than to build. He took that, all of it. And what was his was something we had no capacity to produce on our own. A standing before God that is not based on performance, not based on how well we have done relative to other people, not based on the length of the list of good things we have accumulated, based entirely on what he did. And then, the third day, he rose. The resurrection is not a footnote. It is not a miraculous ending added to make the story feel better. It is the hinge on which everything turns. Because if Jesus stayed dead, then the cross is just a tragedy. A good man who died terribly for something he believed in. Meaningful in the way that any sacrifice is meaningful, but not world-changing, not personal, not something that reaches across 2,000 years and speaks directly into the middle of your specific life right now. But if he rose, if death itself, the most final thing, the thing that every human being has feared in every culture across all of history, if that was not the end of him, then something has changed at a level deeper than we can fully comprehend. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, "If Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile, and you are still in your sins. But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead." The resurrection means the debt is settled. The work is finished. The declaration stands. When Jesus walked out of that tomb, he walked out carrying nothing of ours. It had all been dealt with. And what that means for you, what it means right now, today, in the middle of whatever you are living through, is this. There is no version of your history that places you beyond what the cross covered. There is no depth of failure, no length of distance, no weight of accumulated regret that is too much for what happened there. The invitation that comes from the resurrection is not an invitation to become a better version of yourself before you come forward. It is not an invitation extended only to people who have reached a certain standard or resolved a certain set of doubts. It is an invitation to come as you are, right now, exactly as you are. I know that is easy to say and harder to receive. Some of us have been told for so long, in so many ways, that we are not enough, that the idea of being accepted without first earning it feels suspicious. Like there must be a condition somewhere we have not found yet. Like something this generous must have a catch. But the gospel does not have a catch. It is not good advice. It is not a self-improvement program. It is not a set of principles for living better that you can apply or not apply depending on how motivated you feel. It is news. It is something that happened. Something that changed the fundamental situation between God and human beings. Not because human beings did something to bring it about, but because God decided that the distance was not something he was willing to leave in place. He came down. He lived among us. He took what was ours. He rose. And because of all of that, the distance that should exist, the distance that our choices and our failures and our turning away would have created, does not have to be the final word. There is a line in Romans 8 that I think captures this better than almost anything else. Paul writes, "Neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord." Nothing. not your past, not your doubt, not the worst thing you have ever done, not the worst thing that has ever been done to you, not the years you spent walking away, not the silence you kept because you were not sure there was anyone listening. Nothing separates you from that. That is what came down when He came down. In the next part, I want to talk about something that I think is easy to miss in all of this. Because when we talk about God and suffering and redemption, we often think in large terms. Big events, historic moments, the grand arc of the story. But God is not only interested in the large things. He is interested in you, specifically, personally, in the details of your particular life that no one else fully sees. And what that means for the way you move through your ordinary days is something worth thinking about carefully. Stay with me. At the end of the last part, I said something that I want to come back to now. I said, God is not only interested in the large things, and I meant that. But I want to be honest with you about something first. Because when you have just been sitting with the weight of the cross, with the resurrection, with the scale of what was done and what it means, it can be easy to feel a kind of distance from it. Not a theological distance, a personal one. Like, yes, that is a remarkable story. That is something that changed the world. That is something I can hold on to as a kind of foundation. But then Monday comes, and you wake up with the same worry you went to sleep with, the same situation that has not resolved, the same quiet ache that does not have a name, but that you carry with you into every room you walk into. And somewhere in the back of your mind, without even fully forming the thought, you wonder, is that story, as large and true as it is, does it actually reach this far down? Does it reach this specifically? Does it reach me, here, in this, today? I want to spend this entire part on that question, because I think it matters more than most conversations about faith ever get to. There is an assumption that lives quietly inside a lot of people, including a lot of people who believe, who pray, who have built their lives around their faith. The assumption sounds something like this: God handles the big things, the eternal things, the things that have weight on a cosmic scale. But the small things, the ordinary things, the texture of a Tuesday afternoon when nothing is particularly wrong, but nothing feels particularly right either, those are mine to manage. I should not bother Him with those. He has a universe to run. I understand where that assumption comes from. It comes from a kind of humility, a sense of proportion, a feeling that it would be presumptuous to bring something ordinary before something infinite. But I think it is one of the most quietly damaging things a person can believe. Because what it produces, over time, is a version of faith that is real in theory and absent in practice. A God who is true but not present. A relationship that exists on paper but does not reach into the actual minutes and hours of an actual life. And a person living that way is not living with less faith than they should have. They are living with a misunderstanding of who God actually is. Let me show you what I mean. There is a moment in the Gospels where Jesus is talking to a crowd of people about worry, about anxiety, about the particular kind of low-grade fear that most of us carry so constantly that we have stopped noticing it is there. And He does something interesting. He does not say, "Your problems are small, so you should not worry about them." He does not say, "There are people suffering worse than you, so keep perspective." He says, "Look at the birds. Look at the birds of the air," He says. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. He is making an argument from the small to the large, from the ordinary to the personal. He is saying, look at the least significant creature you can think of. Look at how cared for it is. And then ask yourself what that implies about how cared for you are. And then he goes further. He says, even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. I want to stay with that for a moment, because I think we read past it too quickly. The hairs of your head. Not the large decisions of your life, not the significant moments. The hairs of your head. The details so small and so constantly changing that no human being could track it, that you yourself are not aware of, that disappears when it falls and is never noticed. That is what he chose as his image for how well God knows you. This is not a statement about data. It is not about God maintaining a database of human biological statistics. It is a statement about attention, about the quality of knowing, about what it means to be known by someone who does not miss anything. You are not a category to God. You are not a type, not a demographic, not one of billions of interchangeable human beings that he manages at a distance with general principles and broad strokes. You are known, specifically, individually, down to the parts of you that you have never shown anyone, down to the questions you carry that you have never spoken out loud, down to the fears that surface at 2 a.m. when the day's distractions have finally gone quiet and there is nothing left between you and what is actually going on inside you. He knows all of it, and he is not overwhelmed by it. He is not burdened by it. He is not waiting for you to simplify yourself before he engages with you. He knows it, and he is present in it. I want to tell you about something in the Psalms that I think gets at this in a way that nothing else quite does. Psalm 139 is a poem that David wrote, and it is one of the most personal pieces of writing in the entire Bible. Not personal in an abstract way. Personal in the way that something written out of actual experience is personal. The kind of writing that comes from someone who has genuinely sat with these things and is reporting back from inside them. He writes, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways." Familiar. That word stops me every time. Not observing, not monitoring, not tracking from a distance. Familiar. The way you are familiar with someone you have spent years with. Someone whose habits you know without thinking about them. Someone whose mood you can read from across the room. Someone whose way of moving through the world has become as natural to you as your own. That is the quality of knowing that David is describing. And then he goes further and says something that I think is one of the most honest moments in the entire Psalms. He says, "Even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you." The darkest parts of you are not hidden from him. The things you are most ashamed of. The things you would not say out loud in any company. The versions of yourself that come out under pressure that you wish no one ever had to see. He sees them, and he has not left. I think for some people, that is a frightening thought. If he sees everything, if nothing is hidden, if the worst of me is visible to him, then surely the result of that seeing is judgment. Surely the result is distance. Surely someone who knew everything about me would find reasons to withdraw. But that is not what David experienced. He experienced the opposite. The more he understood that he was fully known, the more he understood that he was fully held. The knowing and the keeping were not in tension with each other. They were the same thing. To be completely seen by God was not to be exposed and left there. It was to be seen and stayed with. That is what it means to be known by God. Not inspected, not evaluated. Known, stayed with, kept. And what I want you to understand is that this kind of knowing, this quality of attention, does not require you to be in a particular state before it reaches you. It is not waiting for you to get better. It is not reserved for the moments when you feel close to God, when prayer feels natural, when faith comes easily. It is present in the ordinary moments, in the difficult ones, in the ones where you feel nothing at all and are going through the motions of a life that has started to feel a little hollow. In all of those moments, you are known, and you are not alone in them. There is a verse in Psalm 121 that I keep returning to when I think about this. He who watches over you will not slumber. He will not slumber. Think about what that means at 3 in the morning when you cannot sleep and the thoughts come that always come when there is nothing else to fill the space. The regrets, the worries about tomorrow, the replaying of conversations that went wrong, the slow accumulation of all the ways you feel like you are not enough. In that moment, you are not alone with those thoughts. There is someone awake with you, not watching from a distance, present, attentive, familiar with the exact shape of what you are carrying because he has been familiar with it for longer than you have. I want to say something now that I think is important and that I do not want to rush past. One of the things that makes it hard to receive this kind of love, this quality of knowing and staying, is that most of us have learned, through experience, that being fully known leads to being left. We have let people in. We have shown them the real version of what is going on inside us. And they have used that, or been overwhelmed by it, or simply drifted away over time until the closeness we thought we had turned out to be thinner than we realized. And we learned the lesson. Keep some of it back. Stay a little behind the surface, because the version of you that people can handle is not the version that actually exists. And the sooner you accept that, the less it will hurt. And then someone comes along and says, God knows everything about you and loves you completely. And something in us wants to believe it. And something else in us, the part that has been paying attention, the part that has the scar tissue to prove it, that part is not sure it can afford to. I understand that. I am not going to tell you that the hesitation is wrong, or that you should simply override it with enough willpower or enough belief. But I want to offer you something. Human knowing has limits. Human love has limits. The people who have let you down were not pretending. They were just finite. They were carrying their own weight while trying to hold yours, and at some point the weight exceeded what they had capacity for. God is not finite. The knowing that Psalm 139 describes is not the knowing of someone who has seen enough of you to form an opinion. It is the knowing of someone who made you, who was present at the formation of who you are, who understands the specific way you were put together, what you were built for, where the tender places are, and why they became tender. That kind of knowing does not run out of capacity. It does not get tired. It does not eventually find the real you to be too much. You are not too much for this. And you are not too little either. Because I think there are two fears that most of us carry. One is that we are too broken, too flawed, too far gone for any of this to apply to us personally. The other is almost the opposite, that we are too ordinary, that our lives are too small, our struggles too common, our pain too unremarkable to be worth the kind of attention we are talking about. Both of those fears are addressed by the same truth. You are known, not despite the brokenness and not despite the ordinariness. In it, through it, fully and without condition. There is a moment in the Gospel of John where Jesus meets a woman at a well in the middle of the day. It is a detail that matters. Women came to wells in the morning, in groups, in the cool of the day. Someone coming alone at midday was someone who did not fit with the morning crowd. Someone with a reason to avoid the company of others. Jesus asks her for water. They begin to talk. And then he starts to describe her life back to her. Not in an accusing way, in a knowing way. In the way that you describe something back to someone when you are trying to show them that you see them. That you actually see them. Not the version they present, but the real one underneath. And something shifts in her. Not because he fixed anything in that moment. Not because he solved the situation. But because she had been seen. Completely. Without flinching. Without the seeing being used against her. She goes back to her village and says, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did." Everything. And she is not hiding from it. She is not ashamed of it being known. She is sharing it. Because something about being fully seen by someone who did not leave had changed the weight of it. That is what it means to be known by God. Not the terror of exposure. The relief of finally being seen by someone who does not leave. So whatever you are carrying into this moment, whatever the specific texture of your particular life is right now, I want you to know that it is not hidden from the one who made you. He is not waiting for a summarized version. He is not asking you to present yourself well. He is not looking for you to have worked through the complicated parts before you come. He already knows, and he is already here. In the last part of this series, I want to bring everything together. Because knowing that you are seen and known is one thing, but there is still a question that everything we have talked about has been building toward. What do you do with it? What does it actually look like to come? To respond? To take a step toward the one who has already been taking steps toward you? Because I think sometimes we wait for a feeling that tells us we are ready. We wait until the doubt clears enough. Until the life settles down enough. Until we feel like we have something coherent to bring. And I want to talk about what it actually looks like. Not in theory, in practice. In the real, ordinary, imperfect way that real people actually begin. Stay with me for the last one. We have covered a lot of ground in this series, and I want to take a moment before we go any further to acknowledge something. If you have stayed through all of it, through the questions and the weight, and the honesty about how broken things are and why they got that way, then something in you has been willing to sit with hard things, to not look away, to stay in the conversation even when it got uncomfortable. That is not a small thing. Most people do not do that. Most people find a way to keep moving so that the questions never get loud enough to demand a real answer. But you stayed. And I think the reason you stayed is the same reason any of us stay when something matters. Because somewhere underneath all the noise, there is a part of you that knows this is not just an interesting conversation. This is the conversation. The one that everything else eventually circles back to. Who am I? Why am I here? Is there someone on the other side of all of this? And if there is, what does it mean for the way I actually live? We have spent 4 parts building towards something, and now I want to bring it all the way to the ground. Not to a conclusion that you hold at a distance, to something you can actually do something with, starting today, starting now. But first, I need to say something that I think is important and that does not get said enough. Coming to God is not a performance. I want to be very clear about this because I think one of the things that keeps people from taking a step is the feeling that they need to arrive in a certain condition, that there is a version of themselves they need to become before they can come forward, that the door is open in principle, but in practice requires a kind of readiness that they do not currently have. And so they wait. They wait until the doubt clears, until the habit breaks, until the life looks a little more like the kind of life a person who approaches God would have, until they feel ready, whatever that means. And the waiting stretches, and the gap between where they are and where they think they need to be does not close. And gradually, quietly, the idea of ever taking the step begins to feel more and more abstract. More and more like something that might happen eventually, but not today. I want to speak directly to that. There is a story in the Gospel of Luke that Jesus told. A story about a son who took everything his father had to offer and left. Spent it all. Made every wrong choice available to him. And eventually found himself so far from home, so depleted, so ashamed of what he had done with the life he had been given, that he could not even imagine asking for what he had lost. All he could think to ask for was to be taken back as a servant. Not a son, a servant, because that was all he felt he deserved. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. That detail matters. While he was still a long way off. He had not cleaned himself up yet. He had not prepared a speech that was good enough. He had not reached the door. He had not even decided for certain that he would be let in. He was still a long way off, still carrying all of it, still in the middle of the distance between where he was and where he used to belong. And his father saw him and ran. Not walked, ran. Jesus says he was filled with compassion. He ran to his son. He threw his arms around him. He kissed him. Before a single word of apology was spoken, before any accounting of what had been wasted, before any demonstration of changed behavior or proven intentions. Just the running, just the arms, just the being found. That is the picture Jesus chose when he wanted to describe what God is like when someone comes home. Not a judge waiting to hear the case, not a father waiting to be convinced. Someone who was watching the horizon, who saw the figure in the distance, who did not wait for the distance to close before moving toward it. That is the God we have been talking about in this entire series. The one who breathed life into us up close. The one who entered our world rather than waiting for us to climb to his. The one who stood in our place at the cross. The one who knows the number of hairs on our heads and the weight of the questions we carry at 2 a.m. That same one runs toward people who are still a long way off. And what that means is this: you do not have to have it together to come. You do not have to have resolved the doubts. You do not have to have stopped the thing you wish you could stop. You do not have to be able to articulate what you believe with any kind of precision or confidence. You just have to turn. That is all. Just turn in the direction of home. And the one who has been watching the horizon will do the rest. Now I want to say something to a few different people, because I think different people are in different places as they listen to this, and I do not want to speak past any of them. Some of you have been carrying faith for a long time. You grew up with it. It is part of how you see the world. But somewhere along the way, it became more of a structure you live inside than a living thing you are in relationship with. The words are familiar, but the presence feels distant. The practices continue, but the weight of them has become more routine than real. If that is you, I want to say this gently. The distance you feel is not evidence that God has moved. Distance in a relationship does not always mean abandonment. Sometimes it means drift. Slow, gradual, almost imperceptible drift. The kind that happens when the busyness of life fills the space that used to be reserved for something else. The way back is not dramatic. It does not require a crisis or a ceremony. It requires the same thing it required at the beginning: honesty. Just telling God the truth about where you actually are. Not where you think you should be. Not the version you present on Sunday or in conversations with people who know you as a person of faith. The real version. I am here. I am dry. I am not sure I feel anything. But I do not want to stay here. That is a prayer, a real one. And it is enough to begin again. Some of you have never had faith and are not sure you want it. You have been listening out of something, curiosity maybe, or a question that has been sitting with you that you have not been able to shake. But committing to something feels like a very large step, and you are not sure you are ready to take it. I want to say something to you that I hope is actually freeing. You do not have to decide everything today. You do not have to sign something or commit to a position you are not sure about, or pretend to believe more than you do. But I want to ask you something. Is there anything in what we have talked about across these conversations that has felt true? Not comfortable necessarily, not easy, but true. The kind of true that lands somewhere inside you that arguments and counter-arguments do not quite reach. If there is, I want to encourage you to follow that. Not to a conclusion you force, to a conversation. A genuine one. The kind where you say, I am not sure about most of this, but I am willing to look. I am willing to ask honestly. I am willing to consider the possibility that the story we have been talking about is not just a story. That kind of honesty is the beginning of something. And some of you are in a place that is harder than either of those. You are carrying something heavy right now, something specific, something that has been there long enough that you have almost stopped expecting it to change. And the idea of hope feels dangerous because you have hoped before and it did not work out the way you needed it to. And protecting yourself from that kind of disappointment again has become more important than the hope itself. I am not going to tell you that everything will resolve the way you want it to. I am not going to make promises about outcomes that are not mine to make. But I want to read you something. In the book of Isaiah, there is a passage that was written to people who were exhausted. People who had been waiting a long time and were running out of the energy to keep waiting. And it says this: He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Not those who have everything figured out. Not those who have never doubted or never failed or never found themselves completely depleted. Those who hope, even tired hope, even the kind of hope that is barely holding on, even the kind that is mostly just a refusal to stop entirely. That is enough for renewal to begin. I want to close this series with something I have been thinking about for a while. We live in a world that moves very fast, that rewards certainty and productivity and having the right answers quickly, that treats slowness as a problem and uncertainty as a weakness, and sitting with questions as a failure to find solutions. And faith does not fit neatly into that world, because faith is slow sometimes. It develops in the quiet. It is built in the ordinary moments, in the small decisions to turn back when you drift, in the gradual accumulation of trust that comes from experience rather than argument. And what I hope, more than anything, as we close this out, is that something across these conversations has given you permission to be somewhere in the middle. Not fully arrived, not fully resolved, not certain of everything, just honest, just present, just willing to keep the question open rather than closing it prematurely in either direction. Because the God we have been talking about is not waiting for you to finish the journey before He shows up. He shows up in the middle of it. He showed up in the middle of the disciples' confusion, in the middle of David's failure, in the middle of the woman at the well's shame, in the middle of the prodigal son's long walk home. In the middle, always in the middle. And wherever you are in the middle of your own story right now, that is where He is. Not ahead of you, waiting impatiently for you to catch up. Right here, in this, with you. That is the thing I most want you to carry out of everything we have talked about. Not a set of arguments, not a theological framework, not a list of things to believe. Just this. You are not alone in the middle of your story. And the one who is with you in it is not a distant observer. He is the one who breathed life into you, who entered the world to be close to you, who stood in your place so that nothing would have to separate you, who knows your name and the weight of everything you carry, and who has not left and will not leave. That is the story, and it is still going. If something in these conversations has stirred something in you, do not let it go quiet too quickly. Sit with it. Follow it somewhere. Let it ask you the questions it is trying to ask. And if you want to talk to someone, if you want to find a community of people who are also somewhere in the middle and trying to be honest about it, do that too. You were not meant to figure this out alone. Thank you for staying through all of it. It has meant something to me to be in this conversation with you. And if you know someone who is carrying the kind of questions we have been sitting with, someone who is asking the hard things quietly and not finding good places to take them, share this with them. Not because you have to, because sometimes the most important thing one person can do for another is simply to say, "Here, I found something that sat with me, and maybe it will sit with you too." Take care of yourself, and I will see you again.